سلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وصل اللهم وسلم على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والشهداء والصالحين وعترة نبيك الطاهرين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. قال الله في كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإلى عاد أخاهم هودا قال يا قوم اعبدوا الله ما لكم من إله غيره إن أنتم إلا مفترون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Chapter 11 of the Holy Quran, verse number 50, is one of the many verses that describes the prophet Hud. The prophet Hud is one of about 25 prophets that are mentioned by name in the Holy Quran. There are many other prophets that are mentioned in our hadith literature, in other literature, but specifically in the Quran, they are limited to around 25. Hud is one of those prophets that is not mentioned in the biblical scriptures, the biblical text, the Judeo-Christian tradition. Hud was an Arabian prophet, and the people that he ministered to, the people that he was sent to, are referred to as Ad. And there are two tribes that are mentioned in the Quran that are referred to by the name of Ad. There's Ad al-Ula, the former, and then there's the latter. And it's said that this name belonged to one of the descendants of the Prophet Nuh. And so the people took the name of their leader. The tribe were known by the name of this leader who was a descendant of the Prophet Nuh. It's said that the city that they had built was named Iram. And in Surah Al-Fajr, chapter 89, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes these people in two verses, just two short verses. إِرَمَ ذَاتِ الْعِمَادِ الَّتِي لَمْ يُخْلَقْ مِثْلُهَا فِي الْبِلَادِ. So God describes Iram as a place that is ذات العماد. It's pillared. Now, this may mean a number of things. One is that the style of architecture that they built, everything was almost built in a vertical way, as if they were pillars. So their castles, their forts, all of their other buildings, there was a lot of pillars that were involved. Another translation refers to the fact that they themselves were pillared, meaning they were big and tall people. And God says, التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. So they built something which had never been seen before, something which was very unique, something which was unrivaled, it was unmatched. And history describes what kind of city this was. It was one that was lush, verdant, greens. There were palaces, there were mansions, there were orchards, and it was truly a great city. It was a city of great big and tall people. It was thriving, it was prosperous. And history tells us a little bit of the location of this city. Now today, if you look at the map of the Arabian Peninsula, there's an area referred to as Al-Rub' al-Khali, the empty quarter. It spans, it's in the middle of the desert, and it spans about 250,000 square miles. So it's a very, very big piece of land in southern Arabia between Yemen, Oman, and the Arabian Peninsula. And some history suggests that this is exactly where Iram was located. And this is where the tribe of Ad was located. So Hud ministered to those people in that area. And so now it's referred to as Al-Rub' al-Khali, the empty quarter. And if you take a look at it, just by looking at it, just by observing, you can tell that nothing's been there for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. But what history suggests is that that one time, it was a lush, green area, and now the city's completely gone. And that's what the Quran tells us. It actually tells us that the people of Ad, eventually, because they engaged in self-destructive behavior, they brought their annihilation upon themselves. So one is that similar to the people before them, they were also idol worshippers, meaning that they had built idols that they were regarded as sources for their different blessings. So they had a statue for the god of fertility, for the god of war, for the god of rain, for the god of whatever. And they venerated them. And so because of that, it's interesting because one of the commentators of the Quran, he says that these different people, these different tribes that are mentioned in the Quran, see, it's not just that they engaged in idol worship. When they engaged in idol worship, their engagement in idol worship was simply a symptom of something else, some other underlying issue that was going on. And if you look at it today, I mean, when we talk about idol worship, it's not this archaic idea that no longer exists. Idol worship is very much alive today. It's just a different form of idol worship. But he says that if you look at these different people, their idol worship was symptomatic of something else. There was usually some underlying issue that led them to idol worship. And so he says that, there's a reason why the idea of monotheism and that there being one God and only one God is so special, because that is also symptomatic as well. When you believe in one God, when you believe in a supreme creator, what that should lead you to do is to behave in a certain way, to follow certain principles. However, when you believe in multiple gods, or when you believe in idols, or something that truly cannot give, that also leads you to behave in a certain way. So it's not just the belief, but it's also the behavior that's symptomatic of the belief. So it was a fertile area. It was lively. The people were idol worshippers. Some of them were built. They were strong. And so the ones that were built, the ones that were tall, the ones that were strong began to oppress the weaker people, the ones that weren't so powerful. And it's interesting because what the Quran says, it says in Surah Al-Isra, that when we want to truly test a people, وَإِذَا أَرَدْنَا أَن نُهْلِكَ قَرْيَةً أَمَرْنَا مُتْرَفِيهَا فَفَسَقُوا فِيهَا. So when time comes for the demise of a group of people, what do we do? Who do we test? Mutrafiha. Mutrafiha refers to the people of the society that are usually living in luxury. So the people that have it, that are in easy living, they have it going good for them. Those are the people that we test. Not just the weak people. We test the people that are living in luxury. And when we test the people living of luxury, it depends whether they pass or fail. So the failure of the society is when you see the elite people that are living in luxury, when they begin to fail, that is symptomatic of the failure of society at large. So the stronger people begin to oppress the weaker people. And so I just want to share something with you which really stood out to me. There was a commentator of the Quran, a professor by the name of Fazlur Rahman. He wrote the book Major Themes of the Quran. He was a professor at the University of Chicago. And Major Themes of the Quran is one of the best, really one of the best books on describing the Quran. The themes that are important, the themes that are significant in the Quran. And what he says is the following. He says, quote, when the Quran talks about the death of individuals like Pharaoh or Korah. Pharaoh is whom? Fir'aun. And who's Korah? Qarun. It is basically talking about the self-destructiveness of a way of life, of a society, of a type of civilization. So God isn't just talking about the annihilation or destruction of a people just because. What God is really talking about, what God is really describing, is the self-destructive behavior that these people have. It's their own self-destructive behavior that they have that eventually leads them to annihilation. And the thing is that some of these behaviors, in the beginning, they don't look so destructive. When the people in a society choose to adopt certain behaviors. In the beginning, they don't look so destructive. They don't sound so destructive. But once they begin to become implemented on a mass scale, on a larger scale, what does that eventually do? It leads to the annihilation of a people. So today, you look today, there are certain behaviors. There are certain lifestyles. And some people say, just do what you want as long as you're not hurting anybody. This is their personal choice. They want to live like this. That may be true, but what if everybody did what these people are doing? The same behavior or the same lifestyle choices? You know, just yesterday, I was watching a talk, and you know, it really had me pondering and thinking about this point. The person that was delivering the talk was describing pedophilia as if it were any other orientation. And today, you know, there's fluidity, so people can choose whatever orientation they want, right? And they were talking about pedophilia as if it was just another orientation that people choose, and it's not their fault that they're like this, and even if they suppress it, we need to sympathize with them and normalize it. And I thought to myself, you know, this is how it begins. What happens if that becomes mainstream? What happens if that becomes everybody's choice? What happens if that becomes everybody's lifestyle? The Quran says we just test a few people, and those are the people that are the elites of the society. And eventually it leads to their demise. So the people of Hud, they turn to, and of course Hud comes to them. He says, people, you got to stop. You got to stop worshiping these idols. You have to stop, the strong of you need to stop oppressing the weak of you, or else eventually it's going to lead to annihilation. Eventually it's going to lead to destruction. What was their reply? Their reply was like the reply of many other tribes and many other people to their prophets, to their messengers. They said, look, we understand what you have to say, Hud, but why should we give up what our fathers taught us? Give us a good reason. Why should we relinquish all the values that we adopted from our ancestors? See, when the Quran condemns idol worship, it's not just idol worship. It's idol worship plus the fact that they're not willing to give up what their ancestors taught them. See, each and every one of us as believers, we believe that one day we will be questioned. We will be questioned by the angels when we are in our grave. And you have to have a response to these questions when they ask you who your Lord is, what your book is, what your faith is, what direction is your qibla, who is your prophet, who do you believe is the successor to your prophet. You can't say, just leave my grave, go to my dad's grave and ask him. He has all the answers. It's not going to work. So you need to have your own response. You need to know why you believe what you believe. And I say this because sometimes we adopt certain values from our ancestors, from our parents, from our grandparents, from our great-grandparents, and we have no idea why we're doing them and whether it's good or bad, whether it's beneficial or harmful. I was with a gentleman yesterday, an older gentleman who is a community leader in his own capacity. And you know, we were running some errands together, and he said something. He said, my parents taught me, don't ever mix with the masses of people. And this is an older gentleman, someone whose parents passed away a long time ago. And you know, had it been anyone else, I would have let it slide. But this is a community leader. So I said to him, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's the right thing to do as a community leader, not mix with the masses? He said, well, you know, I don't, you know, because the masses, they behave in a certain way and, you know, things like that. And I said, well, you know, he said they dress in a certain way and usually when they dress in a certain way, they behave in a certain way. I said, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's true for a certain number of people. But can you tell what's in a person's heart just by looking at them? How do you know what's in a person's heart if you're not willing to engage with the person? If you're not willing to say hello, how do you know what's in that person's heart? Now, sometimes someone gives us a hard time Maybe they look at us in a certain way, or maybe they discriminate in a certain way. And sometimes, I spoke about this a few weeks ago. Don't take anything personal. Maybe something happened in that person's life, and they're venting and they want to take their anger or frustration out on someone, and that someone happened to be you. And so I said something, and he kind of gasped. I said, not everything that our parents and our grandparents teach us is always correct. Not everything. He said, well, we need to respect our parents. I said, absolutely. Never disrespect your parents, ever. Even if they teach you the wrong thing, you never disrespect your parents. Even if your parents are idol worshippers, you never ever disrespect. But sometimes we equate disobedience with disrespect. So sometimes you have to ask yourself, do my parents, or what my parents got from their parents, who got it from their parents, where are those values coming from? Now I say this and some of the younger people get excited. Don't get too excited. I have something for you too. I have a message for you too. Sometimes younger people, we come to this country and we thrive in our academic studies, in our careers. And maybe our parents could not pursue academia. Maybe they couldn't get a college education, their master's or their PhD, whatever it is, for whatever reason that was. Maybe they came as immigrants. Maybe they just didn't have the time. Maybe they didn't have the resources. Maybe they didn't understand the language right away. Maybe they were busy changing your diapers. So please don't ever make the mistake of thinking that you know better than your parents because you have an academic degree. It doesn't put you in a better situation. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and get an academic degree. Please do that by all means. But don't take that as a certificate or as a sign that you understand more than your parents. There are certain things that your parents don't understand. There are certain things that your parents understand that you don't understand. So, it was a tough journey. Hud had to tell these people, just ask yourself, the thing about the prophets, our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the rest of the prophets is, really they didn't have to do so much work in terms of preaching. The significant work was guiding people to the correct way of thinking. It wasn't so much about facts, what's right or wrong. See, God created each and every one of us with an internal guidance mechanism. For a lot of us, or for most of us, it's off. The role of the prophets was to go in and flip the switch, to turn it on again, to awaken the conscious. Not so much what's right. I mean, these people knew what they were doing is wrong. The powerful oppressing the weak. Your conscience tells you that that's wrong. Worshipping something that can't benefit you. You can't go on doing that for 5 or 10 or 15 years and thinking that it's truly benefiting you. So they know deep inside that it's not benefiting them. So the task of the prophets was to flip that switch and turn them around. Now I want to mention just one thing, and this is something that I read last night. This is going back to parents and children and trying to come to an understanding. The author of this book says the following. He's giving advice. He says, I've heard hundreds of young people explain career choice with, quote, I'd really like to prepare for something else, but my parents want me to do this, so I must, unquote. Most parents, I believe, do not intentionally dictate to the children what they must do. What every intelligent parent wants to see is for the children to live successfully. That's the goal of every intelligent parent. If the young person will patiently explain why he or she prefers a different career, a different path, and if the parent will listen, so there's two things. One is patiently explaining, and one is listen. There will be no friction. The objective of both the parents and the young person for the young person's career are identical: success. This goes both ways. So it's not just the parents having to understand. Sometimes the parents have decisions that the children also have to understand. What I'm getting at is that there are two parts to this. One is patiently explaining. The other is listening. Both of them have to happen. And patience is one of those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala characterizes all the prophets with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us patience in this holy month and to grant us His blessings, His knowledge, and His wisdom. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal asri inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat wa tawasaw bil-haqqi wa tawasaw bis-sabr. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وصلى اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وخلفائه علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبط نبي الرحمة وسيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. There's a narration that tells us that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was walking to the date orchards outside of Medina, and he was carrying a bag with him. And in that bag were the seeds for the date trees. And so a gentleman came up to him, and he said to him the following. He said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what are you carrying in that bag? Now, normally what would you reply? You tell the person what's in the bag. Amir al-Mu'mineen did not say date seeds. He said date trees. Perhaps, if God wishes, a few date trees. So, essentially what he's explaining in this narration that the seed is not the seed. The seed is actually the tree. He's able to inform of not what the seed itself is, but what the seed may be. And he says, if God wills, knowing that everything happens with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a beautiful tradition because if you've ever engaged in planting or in gardening, there's something which is very, very therapeutic about it, right? There's something therapeutic, there's something significant, there's something meaningful about planting a seed and watching it germinate and grow and giving it water and giving the soil, providing the soil with nutrients and making sure it's in a position where it's receiving enough sunlight, and eventually it begins to bear its flowers or bear its fruit. And the reason I chose to share this is because a couple of days ago I was reading something that was comparing the work of a minister, so somebody who ministers to a community, with being a gardener. It says that, first of all, the minister or the pastor or the imam or whoever has to have the patience of a gardener. Not everything is going to happen in the way that you want it. The gardener, in the same way that the gardener has to know what soil he's working with, the minister also has to know what type of community he's working with. Sometimes you want something to germinate. Sometimes you want something to happen, but it doesn't always grow. It doesn't always happen in the way that you want it to. And sometimes, if you're ministering to a group, if you're ministering to a group, whether young, old, whatever background, and it does not bear fruit, sometimes it can be pretty frustrating. In the same way that a gardener does his work, his laborious work, and he doesn't get the fruit that he wants. And what I understood with that is that sometimes you have to let people grow at their own pace. You have to have patience. I want to share with you a personal story. A few years ago, I was living in another country overseas, and the home that I was living in, there was a fig tree. And this fig tree, it was being very passive-aggressive with me. So everything else in the garden, in the summer months, it'd be very, very hot. It'd be scorching. Nothing would survive except for this fig tree. It would survive everything else, but it wouldn't give fruit. So it was being, passive-aggressive. And so I tried everything. I gave it water. I held back from giving it water. Some people said you have to flood it with water. Some people said, no. Fig trees, the secret is that you have to not give it water. It's like when you're sick and everybody gives you opinions. Everyone gives you advice and you try everything and nothing really works. So I gave it water, I held back, I did whatever I could, but it wasn't cooperating. So one day I left, and I came back about 3 weeks later. When I walked into the house, I saw big, juicy figs just hanging from the tree, waiting to be picked. And I looked at the tree and I said, "What's the deal? I've been trying to get you to do this for years. I've been giving you love and attention, and you wait till I leave." So it was a pleasant surprise. So I got excited. Next year it didn't give any figs. The next year after that it didn't give any figs. It was very, very frustrating. So when I left that home, there was a gentleman who was taking care of the home, and every time I would speak to him, he'd say, "Yes, the tree is getting bigger. The tree is getting bigger." Now I got excited because I thought he was talking about the fig tree. So I went back to that home about 2 years later. I opened the door to the front yard or front lawn or whatever, and the tree was exactly where it was, the same height, towards my left. On the right, there was another tree that I didn't even know existed, and it had grown about 12 or 15 feet high. The tree that he was talking about was not the one that I had given all of my attention to. It's the one that I had paid no attention to. It grew in an area which I really didn't care about. I didn't give much water. And so I thought to myself, I said, I've been investing all this time, I've been investing all this emotional energy in this God-forsaken tree, and it's not giving me what I want. While here there's another tree, not only did it grow to that much, but he was plucking off, I don't know what kind of tree, it doesn't give a fruit, it gives something which gives an oil of some sort. He was plucking it off, taking it to other homes and planting trees. So where the potential really was, I didn't really recognize. Where the place that had no potential, I was recognizing and I was giving energy. And I thought to myself, I said, how much of our lives do we spend in nonsense, in negativity, in toxicity, in places that won't give us a return on our investment? And what are the areas that we're ignoring that if we give just a little bit of our energy, a little bit of our time, a little bit of our investment, will thrive and prosper? So I just wanted to share that with you. Being able to see the potential is very, very important. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. In this month, this is the month of Dhul Qa'dah, the next month is the month of Dhul Hijjah, and we have a few people from the community who are performing the Hajj pilgrimage. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send them and bring them back safely with everything forgiven. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prepare our hearts and our minds. The day of Arafat, brothers and sisters, which is approaching, whether you are performing the Hajj or not performing the Hajj, the day of Arafat carries much, much reward. In fact, some narrations tell us that the potential for complete forgiveness is reserved in a number of days. Layal al-Qadr, which are in Ramadan, which just passed, and Arafat, the day of Arafat. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prepare us physically and emotionally and spiritually for that day. A couple of quick announcements, brothers and sisters. As you know, annually we have our camps, our youth camp, our regular camp, and our junior camp. This year, our regular camp is taking place from August 3rd to the 6th. So we have, I believe do we have some of these flyers outside, the brochures? We should have some of them. If not, you can find the information from our website. This year it's going to be at Big Bear Lake at the Christian Conference Center. So for the young people who haven't registered, please do register because spots fill up fast. Sometimes we have people coming in at the last minute and we're not really able to accommodate because we just haven't booked for enough. So that's August 3rd to the 6th, and then the junior youth camp is from August 17th to the 19th at the usual place at the outdoor center at the Irvine Regional Park. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم